Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. I have your presenters online, Thenzie and Yolandi, and they will be doing their own introductions. Thank you for joining the webinar with IITPSA. Thenzie, I will hand over to you to start with the introductions and proceed with the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Calvin. I hope I'm audible. Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session on mastering business etiquette in the digital world. So today, in a world where hybrid meetings, remote logins, and instant messaging have become our everyday reality, etiquette is somewhat no longer just about table manners or how we greet someone in the office corridor. It's about how we show respect, professionalism, as well as awareness, and both whether it's online or offline or in person. This is about the way we communicate, manage our time, and also how we carry ourselves has become a direct impact on our credibility, as well as how people trust and perceive us, as well as the workplace culture. So today we'll be exploring how business etiquette has evolved and what challenges as well as opportunities remote work has created for each and every one of us, and why these small behaviors, like for example, answering a call or being punctual for a meeting or just turning on your camera like we have today, can carry such a big meaning in a professional setting. I'm Thenzie Stewart, and with me joining me today is Lindiwe Monyae, who has a colorful experience as well as a CV, decorated CV that I'll just take you through to introduce her. So Lindiwe Monyae is an executive who's truly passionate about empowering people as well as to help people to achieve their dreams. Lindiwe has over 23 years of industry experience, of which 10 of those years have been in the financial services industry. Lindiwe is also the managing executive of the corporate benefit business that is within the insurance and asset management cluster of the Standard Bank Group. In addition to her executive MBA and honors degree in industrial psychology, she also has studied with INSEAD Singapore and received a certification on leading an executive and effective sales force in 2019. She is also a certified coach, registered with the International Coaching Federation, which is the ICF, through Star Coaching. She is also a mom, a wife, an avid reader, and also with a keen interest in people development as well as coaching. So quite a fitting resume for today's conversation. We'll also be publishing a poll just to get a sense of what your feelings are towards business etiquette. So please do engage us on this. To set the scene, welcome so much once again, Lindiwe. In your own words and understanding, and also from a professional perspective, would you like to maybe just give us a description or an understanding of what is business etiquette, and especially with what it means in today's working world? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me, and thank you very much, Thenzie, for the invite. And I see this as a great opportunity to share thoughts, ideas, and maybe, who knows, we will all get to share our views about this interesting topic that you've given to us this afternoon. So you talk about business etiquette. I think that definition has shifted quite a bit. COVID has created many realities for us, whereas before we understood business etiquette as, how we greet each other, as you said, whether we have a firm handshake or not, when we're meeting someone, deciding whether we must hug or not, when we're meeting someone for the first time, having those notebooks and capturing of information when we're talking in a meeting. Well, with COVID, that changed because we went into a hybrid world where it is now extended that definition to much more. And as you rightly say, people read into business etiquette now many things, including how we come across on the screen, how we look over the screen, the way that we capture information using virtual AI notes, whether our cameras are on or off when we're speaking, whether we are shopping while we're having a meeting. All of that is now part of business etiquette. And we've seen that both with clients and with people in general, they take much more care in understanding, are we serious by just merely our behavior online and offline?
Thank you so much for that and for setting that scene, Lindiwe. So do you think that soft skills has taken a backseat to technical skills? And if so, why do you think that?
I think soft skills are still very important. So let's just talk a little bit about what soft skills we're referencing. Soft skills would be things like how we use tone in both the way that we speak verbally and the way that we write. And so when we're talking about soft skills, we are talking more about the way we make people feel. And it's interpersonal skills because it also includes the way that we want to be received and perceived. And so what we actually say content-wise, if we're selling something or we're offering a service, you can have all the technical know-how, but if you're not able to think about the interpersonal skills that you're portraying at the time, it's not going to be listened to. So let's give an example. If our emails are all caps and we are on point with the technical skills that we are sharing, or the content of what we are sharing, the person might be just put off by the all caps that we're using in an email. 2, let's talk about the technical skills of using the computer or using that phone or using Teams or using Google, any of the virtual services that we have. The faster you're able to catch up with the latest and the greatest in these applications, the faster you're able to connect with the global world. So both from a behavior perspective and how quickly you catch up with the latest technology, both important. But if you sell a product, if you are in the service business, if you are client facing, soft skills are as important as they were before. And having the technical expertise just enhances the experience that you're giving to people that deal with you.
Great. Thanks for that, Lindiwe. So what would you say to a young, let's say, for example, a technical person like an IT person who says, you know what, I'm so qualified in my skills. I do my job so well. So I think I can, just brush over those soft skills. You'll find that IT people tend to think that, other people or the normal user is not so important or not so or stupid, or what do they say? They have these jokes of ID10T or problem existing between keyboard and chair, a pep cake type of problem. What would you say to a young graduate coming in with that type of arrogance in terms of soft skills?
I think there's 2 things. First, digital natives, as they like to be called themselves, are really good at what they do because it's almost like they built with and they grew up with this innate skill of dealing with technology. And you see it at the moment with the young graduates that are entering the workplace, but also with 2-year-olds. If you give them an iPad, they don't have to think about what to do with that tablet or iPad. They just know innately how to use it and how to get the best out of it. Well, that gives you one part of being successful in the corporate world. So the technical skill is great because all of us need to have that technical skill. In fact, if you don't have it, At the moment, you are not regarded as someone who can take the business forward. You are not recognized for being a team player because you do need to have the technical skill. However, to that young graduate who is excellent at the technical skill, especially our IT colleagues who might have joined us, it is as important to learn how to interact with people. One of the studies have shown that the youth that's coming into the market at the moment from an employment perspective find it very difficult to engage with older generations and find it very difficult to engage at a communication level as we're doing right now. They prefer to work on their own, a specialist in a corner somewhere, and deliver as quickly as possible so that they can continue doing the things that they're passionate about and the things that they like. The workplace asks for something different. The workplace is still very much about how you engage with people, how you communicate verbally with them, how you spend time, learning the art of patience. All of those things still very relevant, especially for those who want to move up the hierarchy and to get promoted.
Wow, awesome. And not to labor the point, we were talking now about graduates. So if we think about them, do you think that remote work has disadvantaged these young professionals coming into the working place because of the remote work? Are they missing out on the office lessons, that unspoken office culture of how you have to carry yourself and how you carry yourself in a meeting, how you speak, how you engage? Do you think that they are actually at a disadvantage because of these changes in the way that we work?
Well, let's talk about what happens when you're a graduate and you go into an organization. Let's say pre-COVID, when it was still going to be at the office. The onboarding of any graduate into an organization has many aspects to it. The first aspect is you get the feel of the place. And so you get to interact with the environment that you're going to be operating in. And in there, you start to assess how well you're going to settle into the space and which areas you're going to be frequenting or that are preferable to you. So it allows you a spatial awareness and allows you to understand your environment better. Traffic, how do you transport yourself from home to the office? Where do you get your coffees in the morning, etc., etc. So it is an awareness of how I'm going to cope in this environment. Then the second part of having graduates in the office was about meeting the colleagues that you're going to be working with. So starting to assess who are the people, what type of personalities, characters am I going to be dealing with? What do we have in common? How do we establish rules and ways of working when we are looking at each other right across the desk or in offices? Who likes what within the office? Who comes dressed in what way? And you start to picture yourself and place yourself within the team. And there develops a team dynamic that actually helps you out as you try to find your way within this new team. Third, you get to see the non-verbal cues from a person. So body language starts to teach you about a lot of things about your colleagues. You start to see when someone is getting irritated, when you start to see how someone gets excited. And through all of that, you are learning about how your team operates and how you respond to them. So that's when you have the physical awareness. Virtually, which is more around post-COVID, you start to see that all of those cues that I've just spoken about have been taken away. And what you're left with is a very unemotional interaction with someone over the screen. It's very difficult to pick up non-physical cues in a screen, very difficult to pick up emotion over the screen, very difficult to get to know someone if you don't make it deliberate over the screen. So what does that take away from you? It takes away the ability to understand the team that you're operating with, and you know less about even your line managers and the colleagues that you're going to be working with. So do you have a disadvantage? My view is that yes, you do. And I've seen it with some of the colleagues, even in our own space, who started during COVID, where they didn't have all of what I'm talking about. And only now are they using the networks that they've created post that period. And in a way, they're now left behind, even though they've been with the team for some years, but they're still left behind from a team dynamics perspective, because that level of trust has not been developed as yet. So I would encourage that we use a hybrid format where you get to spend some time in the office with the colleagues so that you can get this piece, and also utilize virtual tools.
Wow, that's great. And that is so true, because I look at myself. I also started one of my jobs during COVID. And I must say, I say even now, because we're working hybrid, I still feel like I'm new. You just almost don't get used to everything, because you do not see all of the aspects of the business and of the organization. And you also don't engage everybody. And some of the people you've spoken to, a couple of times, but you've never seen their face. So it's always so difficult when you meet someone and you ask, what's your name? And they say, no, but we've spoken, but I've not seen you.
Online.
So it is, yes, we've just spoken online, but we've never actually met in person. So yes, no, definitely a challenging dynamic, and something that we need to address, especially for our graduates. But looking at in terms of, the core pillars when it comes to business etiquette, I think I'll raise a few, and then I would just like to have a conversation around that. If we look at communication as well as digital ethics, you touched on, how you type in email. But I think in terms of calls and messaging, what are the biggest mistakes that some of our graduates and even our current workforce employment make when it comes to, calling someone when they're online or messaging them? And also looking at punctuality, there are people, when they schedule, for example, an online meeting, they prefer that they are the ones that start the meeting, or not someone else joining 5 or 10 minutes early and starting the meeting. So on those two things, what's your insights there?
A very interesting one there, Thenzie. So I think let's start with some of the etiquette. And I actually learned a new word, that there is a concept called netiquette. And netiquette is about online etiquette. So we will start with the normal business etiquette, and when we go to digital etiquette, which is netiquette, I'll explore a little bit more there. So on the physical side, I think the first one around business etiquette is a simple thing as greeting. So someone calls you in the morning, and actually we had this very conversation with my team today, because we are trying to figure out what is the most appropriate time to phone people in the morning. Is it pre 8 a.m.? Is it post 8 a.m.? What is well supported by everyone? And there's varying views about this. So despite the fact that companies might differ in terms of expectation of when I can call someone, the first thing to do is to greet. You can't just go straight into the topic of your call, because what that does is either throw the person off, or the person on the other line was not prepared for whatever topic you're going to introduce, and that just seems quite rude to go straight into what you wanted to say. So that's the first thing. The second one is to check, is this the right time for us to have a conversation? So here you are almost contracting with the person. You are contracting that I'm now starting a formal conversation with you, and I want to check whether the space that you're in the environment that you're in allows for the conversation that I'm about to have with you. And thirdly, often we are looking for something, either a decision or an approval or direction, or something that needs to be discussed within the broader team. And so it is also wise to state what is it that we want as an outcome of the call that we are making. So to give you an example, if I called someone in my team or someone called me, it would be, hello, how are you? And there would be an answer, and I must listen to the answer. Then I would pause. Is this a good time for us to have a conversation about topic A? And what I'm actually looking for at the end of this conversation is a decision on B. And so creating a structure around that conversation helps a lot. And it also prompts the other person that please be ready with these decisions or be ready to give me this information. Lastly, what it does is showing respect for someone else's time and showing respect for what you are looking for. It allows for quality thinking. So that's the one part. The second part around business etiquette is about the language that we're using. And I know that depending on when you were born and which generation you fall under, it could be acceptable to be swearing as I am speaking to you. And some organizations actually allow it. But if we're talking about true business etiquette, you don't want to be seen to be either exploiting or going beyond what is acceptable in the way that we utilize language. So you want to be as business confined as possible without being rigid. And so what does that entail? It entails us staying away from swear words, which might be actually quite normal for some people in their normal speech. You also want to make sure that you are clear, especially when you're using messaging like texting, because often when we are texting, we want to use abbreviations and shorthand because, well, you can be YOU or could be just you. And in a business etiquette context, you want to be spelling out the words that you are using, not using shorthand. Lastly, let's go to the netiquette, which is the digital etiquette piece. Often when we get into a meeting, we would like and prefer, I know people who prefer to keep their cameras off. It's comfortable. Well, I can sit anywhere I like. I can even be lying in my bed as I'm having this session. I could be busy with the game on one side and having the meeting. Well, that won't work in a business setting. What you want to do is register yourself by showing yourself on camera. What that does is saying, I am here, I'm focused in this particular meeting. And if your organization allows it that you can go off camera, then you can, after registering that I'm here, I'm present, and I am here to listen and add value. And earlier on when we started, I spoke about people who take chances and start meetings and decide, maybe this is a good time for me to go pour petrol. Petrol's going up today, so let me quickly go and get to the garage, or let me quickly go and wash my car, or macro has a special, let me go for that special before everything runs out. You do get to pick out that people are not focused. You do get to pick out when you're listening that someone might miss a cue or miss a question that was coming to them because they are busy focused on other things. So being deliberate about meetings, creating a quiet space within wherever you normally take your meetings at home, creates a business structure.
Wow. The garage one and the car wash one really got to me because, yeah, I think I've had an experience with someone being at the car wash or sitting in the car. Yeah, those ones are really off-putting sometimes, I can say. Okay, and the camera engagement, yes. No, thanks for that tip, because sometimes people make the excuse also when it comes to the camera to say that they're watching for bandwidth and all of those type of things. But I think it's a good thing to switch it on, as you say, in the beginning, and then switch off, at least just to show that you are present and that you are engaged. And then in terms of following up, following through when you've had an engagement, how important is that in terms of showing your engagement as well as, providing feedback when you've had a call or a meeting or a discussion, whether it be highly formal or informal?
Thanks, Thenzie, for that question, because I think it goes beyond just etiquette. It talks to a culture of execution. So if we think about it, we're in organizations towards delivery of a specific goal. And in order for us to deliver on that specific goal, the key point is making sure that there's conciseness and clarity in terms of the meetings that we're having. No one wants to have a meeting that has no point, that is just to waste people's time and to kill the day. When we have a meeting, firstly, is to make sure that there's an agenda, there's a specific outcome that we want to get, and there's conciseness in terms of what do we want to get from that particular meeting. So in light of that, you as the either initiator of the meeting or the person that owned the meeting has a responsibility to make sure that the outcomes that we agreed on have been executed and have been implemented. And this is part of being a high performance team or creating a high performance culture within an organization. And in order for you to be able to do that, previously, before we had all the tools that we now have online, we would write minutes and we would write actions and we will circulate these on email post the meetings, and the agenda will come before the meeting or pre-reading if there's pre-reading. And post the meeting, there would be a note that then specifies what was agreed and who takes what accountability. Now we have much better tools to do all of this. You could create a SharePoint where you have the agenda, the pack, and expectations. And once the meeting is done, you now have the actions that have been agreed on all in one place where everyone can have a view. Two, you now have AI notes and even recordings where it can transcribe for you in terms of the discussion and even summarize for you in terms of what was agreed in the meeting. And all you need to do then as the initiator is to follow up in terms of the actions. So the important part here is the end game, which is I want to make sure we deliver on what has been agreed on, and there's an accountability from each person who was given an action by a specific date to deliver on those things. And I know that it can be a drag as well to try and keep the discipline of doing this, but technology has now become a big enabler in making sure that we execute well. And so as we speak right now, there's lots of AI note-taking that can be utilized to even go and track how far people are with what was agreed. So towards a culture of high execution and team effectiveness, this is a great way of closing meetings where people know they will get their actions afterwards.
Wow, awesome. Thanks for that, Lindiwe. And just a comment that I have from Tony, where he says, even keeping up with email messaging instead of focusing on the meeting and not being really involved or engaged, that is also, being quite unprofessional. And he also says that I've sat in many online meetings where one can tell quite quickly when specific meeting attendees are not engaged. Yeah, so bless you. No, very, very important in terms of that.
I think Tony makes some interesting comments there, Thenzie, because what tends to happen as well is when we're busy, a meeting is happening, And I think, ooh, let me just catch up on these responses on email quickly while the meeting is happening. And what Tony has just described happens. I lose track of what's happening here, and I zoom into these responses that are calling me on email. And Tony, you're absolutely right. Then the meeting is actually quite useless because the people who are there are not focused on what's happening there. They're somewhere else mentally.
Yes, no, definitely. Thanks for that comment, Tony. Transitioning into, ethics and boundaries, I think we touched on it slightly, where we look at our personal and professional boundaries and looking where we are when we work. I would like us to maybe talk about time, with remote work, and especially on the days that you work from home, there's a lot of guilt sometimes associated with it, where you find that you continue working, right into the evening and sometimes till late at night. I found that personally, it has been quite easier to actually switch off on the days that I've gone to the office and I actually come home at that 5 or 5:30. But if I also still come a bit early, then I find that I'm continually engaged with work till about 6, 7 p.m. But going into the office just makes it much more easier. I think maybe it's just a old school type of mindset, where you just don't switch off. And sometimes it's also work ethic. Just a note on that, I actually read something that says that the only people that will feel, the effects of you working late are your kids. So you'll either miss out on their lives, or they'll actually acquire quite a good work ethic. So there's a good and a bad side to it. But if we look at those boundaries, especially as professionals, in terms of, your personal life and in terms of the work and the amount of time that you need to give to your work, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a very interesting and sensitive one for me, because I'm not the best at managing my time. I'm somewhat of a workaholic, but I do think that boundaries are important. And they're important for not just yourself, but also for colleagues and the people that you work with. So as part of the example, some people like me like to work over the weekend. And when you work over the weekend, whether it's in the morning or afternoon, once an email hits someone else's inbox, you have not disturbed that person. You have now made them focus on work when their head was on their weekend. And so, as much as for me, the boundary line might not be about the weekend, but be about finishing off something that I want to do or delegating something that I wanted someone to action, I do have to think about, how am I interrupting someone else's weekend if I'm sending an email then? So that's one. Two, we now have technology that can keep the email, so I can work on the email on Outlook and save it so that it goes out the following day. And what that allows for is that my need to get work through has been fulfilled, and I'm also thinking about other people's boundaries. So that is a very important point, to not just think about yourself in boundaries, but also the people that you might be affecting by your actions. True, if we think about meetings, you would know that when we utilize either Teams or Zoom, some people might choose to just dial you without booking an appointment with you, because I'm just expecting that you'll be able to pick up, and immediately you are on a call, you're on a camera with me, without considering, are you dressed for it? Are you ready for it? Are you able to have the meeting with me? I'm just telling you because my need at the moment is to see you and to have a conversation with you. And so again, here it's best to book an appointment, because you are now respecting someone's boundary, and tell them that you're going to be calling them at a specific time. And it's going to be on a virtual space, and therefore they must be ready to have that interaction with you. Another interesting one is the issue of ethics. So often we don't check in with people. May we record the session? Is this session a confidential one? And sometimes people even take screenshots without really asking, may I use the material that is being shared? And can I take screenshots of what's being shared? And so I think it's very important as professionals to really consider all of these aspects when we're going into the working space, and also check in with the people that we're doing this with, because what we think is right for ourselves might just be infringing on someone else's boundaries. And that's not a great way of running a professional organization.
Wow, that's actually so good, Lindiwe, because you find that sometimes your higher level leadership would just like to dial you in as well. And I think that is such a good thing that, one needs to show respect. And I think, especially for myself as, one managing a team, I think it's something good to note that there's that two-way respect where you don't just call someone and you don't just speak to them, because I do find it sometimes, with the junior ones, they will also just type a message where they say to you, I had a problem recently, and they just said, "Hi, has your issue been sorted?" Not even having a clue who I am. Not to throw the hierarchy card, but the thing is, you never know who you're talking to, and you might be speaking to that executive who won't take kindly to the way that you speak to them, or the way that you've typed that message. So I think a key thing would be then to always focus on how you speak and how you type to everybody, and just always have that higher level of etiquette, as you've alluded to.
Yeah, that's true. The whole etiquette piece around emails is very interesting, especially if you deal directly with external clients, where sometimes we forget, especially if we have the servicing teams and there's a response to a client or responding to another colleague for that matter, and there's no greeting, there's no body, there's no closure of the email. It's just exactly as you said, just a statement or just a question. So it is something that comes up quite a bit.
No, thanks for that, Lindiwe. And just in terms of, a higher level of professionalism, if we look at it, how can, employees actually protect sensitive company information while they're working from home? I know you touched on the item where you say that, sometimes people taking screenshots of content. I don't know, is there any other items that you can think of, and how we can actually protect the organizations we work for in terms of that?
I think firstly, organizations which some employees are not aware of have policies that govern the use of data and where data can be used, in what format, and in what situations, including the way that we speak on social media, the way that we interact with external parties on company information. And if those policies are breached or they're violated, there could be very serious consequences for doing so. So I think the first thing to do is understand your company policy, understand what is approved, what is acceptable within your own company, and then stick to that. But additionally, often you might have a very important and confidential meeting and you don't have your earphones on. And so whether you're at home or you're in a public space, or you decided to go and work at Mug and Bean, or you decided to go and work in another area, coffee area, and you're now sharing company information on speaker without consideration of who is around you, and what the impacts of that could be. So taking care to make sure that you have earphones when you are in meetings is an important aspect. Then the second one is that sharing of information on company screens, company tablets, etc., needs to have passwords. So making sure that you either encrypting that information before you send it off to someone else, even if it's just sending it as an attachment in a conversation as we are having now, is quite important, because then you know the information is not landing on wrong hands. And even if it did, because life happens and we lose our tools, whether they were stolen or you forgot them at your friends over the weekend and your laptop is no longer with you and someone tried to get into the information, that information is password protected, which is really important. And therefore, you'll be able to safeguard what you've been given as your responsibility.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for that, Lindiwe. To our attendees, we ask that you please pose your questions on the Q&A. I see that there is a question that has come through. We'll have a chance for that just before we close off the webinar within the next few minutes. Just to focus still on the etiquette part, we've talked about, is it appropriate to just dial someone in? And then you actually just sneezed now. And I was wondering, how does one handle that? I feel also like now there's like a little bit of a scratch in my throat and I've been really, suppressing it quite a bit. But how does one handle, sneezing and coughing? Because sneezing is actually quite a difficult one because of the, how it, coughing, you can still
just comes.
But sneezing just comes. How do you handle such things if you need to step away? Or let's say sometimes you have an urgent urge to go to the bathroom. How do you handle that?
It is a difficult one because these are all biological actions and responses that we don't sometimes have control over. But I think people also understand that in meetings. What I have seen work, which is not about sneezing, but if we need to be excusing ourselves for a few minutes for either getting water, going to the bathroom, whatever the case might be, quickly getting a delivery, is people just noting on the chats that they would like to excuse themselves for a short period. I'm sure the audience here knows about BRB. I'll be right back, and that indicates that I'm no longer part of the conversation. So whatever gets mentioned while I'm out, I cannot answer or respond to. And when you are back, you then register that, well, I'm now back and we can continue with the conversation, or I will catch up on what I might have missed during the session. If there is something that happens, like the sneezing that happened with me just now, and I actually didn't do it, you could say, excuse me, afterwards, or just say that, sorry for that, if it's something that you are not in control over. Ultimately, biological reactions are things that are biological. But if there is something that you can do about it, well, excusing yourself is absolutely possible.
Yeah, I think it should be a part of the onboarding process, where we make people feel comfortable to actually say, it's okay to excuse yourself, especially if you have an urge to go, or to mute yourself while you cough or sneeze, because sometimes you find that, I think I was in a meeting where someone was sitting with their husband in the office and this person just kept on coughing. And, we're trying to have a very high level professional meeting and someone's coughing in the background and they're not saying anything, or maybe move to another room or something like that. So I think those are all of the things that one needs to take cognizance of and be aware of. Yes, but moving on to in-person interaction. So now you've onboarded, especially for our young ones, and now it's your first time going to the office. Let's say you went in the first day. Sometimes you find that organizations actually even courier the devices to the candidates that they have employed. How does one, handle that, especially for our younger ones, to say that, okay, I'm coming into the office for the first time, greeting, handshakes, how to dress even, because I think our younger generation have at that point, this is who I am type of attitude. This is the way I dress. My clothes do not define me. What would you say to that?
Yeah, the dress code conversation has been a fascinating one over the period, because depending on the culture of the organization that you work for, in some areas it's quite acceptable to come into work with a pullover, in sneakers, especially for IT professionals. They love being relaxed, comfortable, and able to do what they need to do without anyone really judging on what they're wearing. However, it is important to check in with your organization. And so one of the things that we promote is that ask the question. So if you're still coming through for your first day, ask the questions. What is your dress code that is acceptable in the office? Could I bring through my lunchbox? Is there a canteen? Is it possible to use earphones while I'm working? Is that a practice that happens within this particular organization? Because sometimes people who want to focus, and especially the youth, they like to put on their earphones and they continue with their work. And in some environments, that means don't speak to me. And they see it as you blocking other people off. And sometimes it's not about that. It's just because they want to focus and zoom in. So checking in with the HR or PNC individual to see what are the things that are acceptable in that particular organization is important. And rightly so, what you're wearing and how you look like, how your hair is, should not be a reflection of what you can do or your potential or your level of performance. But in the environments that we're working in corporates, people can be quite judgmental, and they can make assumptions based on our image and the way that we look. And more importantly, they talk about brands being shaped within 3 seconds of people meeting each other. The best thing to do is to be on the safe side and create a strong brand for yourself when you're just starting off, because whatever brand that you create in that first stage has a lasting impression. And it's better to then adjust as you get to know the environment that you're going to be working in.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Lindiwe. Time has flown by so quickly. Oh, my word. The WIIT will definitely release a article within the next month's newsletter to continue engaging on this topic. So I'm just going to give an opportunity for 2 questions that I'm just going to read to you, Lindiwe, that we have in our Q&A. So we have the first question from a junior, Nomzamo Nyoni. Thank you so much for your question. As a junior, if I'm dealing with an urgent issue I can't resolve and my seniors are busy, and sometimes this is all day, how can I follow up to express the urgency without sounding pushy? And sometimes I say another senior asked me to reach out, since the delivery pressure usually comes from them. So how would they engage that quickly, just in a minute or so?
Yeah, so depending on how urgent something is, I think there's 3 avenues, and also depending on which company culture you guys work with. The first one is the utilization of a WhatsApp. And so you could send a WhatsApp to that particular line manager explaining that you are aware that they are in a full day session. However, they might not have had a view of their inbox, and therefore you're requesting that they look at this one item that needs an approval or that is of an urgent nature. So that means I respect the fact that you are not at your desk, but I have an urgent need that needs to be fulfilled. So that's one. The second one, often when you have senior people who do have PAs, those PAs tend to be communicating with their principals even while their principals are not there. So approaching the personal assistant or the personal executive to say, I have an urgent matter that's sitting in the inbox. Please may you raise with whomever. So for them to look at it for me, because it is important. And then lastly, executives generally often say that you should not make your problem their problem or your lack of planning their issue. And what that means is sometimes the urgency is created because we've delayed in doing something. And now it's last minute and therefore it needs to be done. So where we can avoid it and we can address something earlier, let's give the leeway to accommodate for those instances. But generally, those are the two areas. WhatsApp and through the PA would be the best way.
No, awesome. Thank you so much for answering that one. Quickly, in just a minute, Lindiwe, any closing remarks or pointers for our attendees as well as those that will be watching the recording later?
I think that times have changed. We also have a lot of different diversity in terms of each generation has their own way of working and what they see as acceptable and not acceptable. I think that if we want to grow in organizations, showing respect in the way that we ask our questions, in the way that we dress, in the way that we handle queries, in how we speak, will take us a long way across all generations. People in general, they like to know that you respect them. They like to know that you respect their boundaries, and they like to know that they matter. And so being clear, short, and concise in our communication, whether it's in a hybrid environment or in a virtual environment or physically, all of those soft skills still apply. And so using them is wise while we use technology to enable us to do what we need to do in a much more efficient way and also in a much faster way than before.
Thank you so much for all of those insights, Lindiwe. We really appreciate your time that you took to be with us today, and we'll definitely engage you on some of the questions that are still in the chat. And as I said, we will do an article to answer some of these questions and address any other items that we might have left out during the webinar, as this will also be a part of a series of webinars that we do on soft skills. This is just one of them, and I trust that everybody that joined did gain some insights and some valuable information on that. With that, I would just like to give out a few vouchers. We did promise you guys that as part of the call. So our first voucher is going to Nomzamo Nyoni. You can maybe just put your email address in the chat, please. You'll be receiving a 500 Rand Take a Lot voucher. And then another one will go to Clifford. Apologies on the surname. I think it's Heppelthwaite or Thwate. You will just correct me on that. I do apologize for mispronouncing your surname. Even though we are the WIIT, we also engage males and also share our resources with them. And then our third and final voucher will go to Geraldine Mangwende. So congratulations, guys. You should be receiving your vouchers via email. I'll hand back over to Calvin just to tell us a bit about the IITPSA, the benefits of the organization, as well as an exciting event that is coming up, Leader X. Thank you so much once again, Lindiwe, and back to you.
Thank you very much.
Calvin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thenzie and Lindiwe. I think that was a very important webinar and discussion. I think we take for granted our presentation and how we, like, I like what you said, that as a brand, you're only a few seconds before somebody decides if they like you, if they want to listen to you, or if you look presentable enough to whatever you're selling at that moment. Because I think the thing in life that a lot of people miss is that it doesn't matter what job you do. You don't necessarily have to be a salesperson, but every time you want to do a presentation, you want to talk to someone, you're actually selling yourself. And the best thing to start by selling yourself is how you present yourself, how you speak, how you dress, groomed, etc., etc. So I think that's something that we should take seriously. I really liked this conversation. We're running out of time. I only have 1 minute to do a quick chat about IITPSA. So I think I'll just do a high level, and I think I will attach this benefit that I put down. I had a small presentation that would have taken 5 minutes. So just I would just beg the rest of the people to just give me 2 minutes. So I think I'll just talk more on what is coming. So we have a huge event coming up on the 9th of September at LeaderX. The IITPSA Gauteng chapter and the SIGs are being represented. SIG Air, Innovation SIG, SIGist, SIG Cyber, SIG Cyber, and the Gauteng chapter. And most importantly, the women in IT chapter have presented a huge, yes, yes, Thenzie, they have a huge platform where they're having a CIO panel. All three of our professional CIOs, which are all members of Women in IT, will be doing a presentation later that afternoon. The good news is that IITPSA members on the 9th of September have free access to LeaderX. Please just watch the news, your emails. We have a code that you can use to register for LeaderX, and you'll be able to attend for free that day. You can attend Women in IT Mentor Desk. You can attend the workshops. You can attend the CIO panel later in the afternoon, a TED talk, etc., etc. We have a full day, and it's going to be very awesome. And it's for free for all our members. So thank you again for attending our webinar today. There's more webinars. Please just keep an eye on your emails when we inform you what's coming next. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.